welcome back to the Stick 'em Up podcast. Brundi, we're getting kind of close to the preseason here. It's slowly creeping up. We're getting through some more teams. We're narrowing it down, and this episode in particular, we have the Carolina Hurricanes and the Los Angeles Kings to talk about. So, with that in mind, do you have a preference whether you start with the Kings or I do with the Hurricanes?
I don't have a preference. All I can say is, like you said, preseason's coming up. I'm very excited to see, how a lot of these teams are kind of looking after a lot of the offseason moves. And again, with a lot of the young rookies that are coming up, who makes early impressions, who makes a solid case to make their respective teams. A couple of which we'll actually get to talk about today. Some young players. So I'll be a nice guy here. I will let you start off with the Carolina Hurricanes, the modern day San Jose Sharks, if you will. Great regular season team, uh, always failing in the playoffs, it seems.
Yeah, and they really are a team that a lot of people have had them. There hasn't really been a specific year where I feel like a lot of people really picked them to win the cup, but they've been a like a top 5 pick to win the cup like 5 years in a row now, 4 years at least.
Yeah.
So it really is like they need to kind of prove themselves at some point. Like they need to break through and at least get to the finals. I don't think it's cup or bust necessarily, but I really think this team needs at least a cup appearance. At this point, they've reached the conference
Yeah.
finals. I want to say a couple of times, right? Like 2 years ago against the Panthers, I believe.
Yeah.
Uh,
They did get swept though,
they did get
which
swept,
isn't a good
but
look. Like you're one. I think that actually might be their only um appearance in the Eastern Conference Finals. I'll look it up here just to be sure.
they're just one of those teams I kind of thought they'd always got there. But I guess yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure if they have. But they consistently make it to the second round. But that's at some point you gotta get to the top of the mountain.
So obviously, from 2010 all the way to 2018, they were always out of the playoffs. 2019, they did lose in the conference finals. Um, that being that's when the year they got swept by the Bruins. 2020, they lost in the first round. 2021, they lost in the semifinals, so round two. Same thing in uh, 2022, 2023, again, they did get to the Eastern Conference Finals, but they did get swept. And then last year, going out in the second round again. So, I mean, it's not bad when you're looking at it like, okay, since they've gotten back into the playoffs, like, 2 out of 6 years, 33% of the time, actually, they are getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. But, you know, how much does that really matter if they haven't even won a game yet? Like, since they've
Yeah,
gotten back in the playoffs, they haven't won 9 games in a playoff run.
yeah, and you got to win 16 to win it all. So they're they're close, but they're also not. It's one of those things. At the same time, the NHL playoffs really is teams don't break through until they do. Like they just all of a
Mhm.
sudden teams put it together and they go on these runs. But uh, this team still has a very good structure. They got a really good core. The
Some
team,
great contracts.
some great contracts we'll get into as well.
Great ones.
Uh, the Carolina Hurricanes last year went 52, 23, and 7 for a total of 111 points. That's only 3 points back of the President's Trophy winning Rangers. And their goal differential was plus 63, 10 better than the Rangers who won the President's Trophy. So they
Yeah.
they play a really solid game. Obviously those are regular season numbers, but you know, the playoffs are different, but also, teams that do good in the regular season tend to translate to the playoffs to some degree.
Yeah. Quickly also to add on, goals for 279. That's seventh best in the league this past season. Goals against 216, fourth best in the league. So they're top 10 for both goals for and against, which is a good sign for them, and it means that obviously that something's going right for them. Their power play 26.9%. The league average was 21%. So again, their power play is above league average. Their penalty kill
by a decent amount, by like 6 or 7%. Like that's really solid.
Yeah, but basically 6%, and then the penalty kill was 86.4. League average was 79. So again, like they're quite a bit above the league average for both power play and penalty kill. So I mean, they had a good regular season. Like they were one of the best teams all year long. So
yeah,
now it's just a matter of translating it into a deep playoff run.
Yeah, and like I think a lot of people are expecting them to take a bit of a step back this year, especially with the absolute arms race that is the Eastern Conference. But them being in the Metro really helps them, because I do think they are going to have one of those top 3 spots absolutely locked up in the Metro.
They got to, right?
Like
I think they got to.
The Rangers can beat them in the regular season fine. The Devils have a chance, but that's only a chance, and I do not like who would push out the Hurricanes, the Islanders, the Capitals, the Penguins, like that. No, like that's that seems like a real long shot.
The Capitals no, the Islanders no. Like the only way the Islanders are above Carolina is if Ilya Sorokin plays, 60 games and wins the Vezina, like is head and shoulders the best goalie. Like, the only team in the Metro is the Rangers. I can't even say the Devils. Like the Devils maybe, but again, we really haven't seen enough from the Devils to be like, I can, say they've got a good chance of finishing above Carolina, because we don't know what that New Jersey team yet, which we've yet to cover, and
and
some injury news with them that doesn't sound the greatest right now, but you never know. But this team is going to be one of the top teams in the league, league wide, not even just in their division or conference, like league wide.
Dude, honestly, even if Ilya Sorokin played like 60, 65 games and put up like a 940 on the year, I still think the Hurricanes probably finish ahead. Like it was, the Hurricanes had 111 points last year to the Islanders 94. That's 17 points of difference. Not only is that 17 points, which is a lot, but 16 of the Islanders' points came from overtime losses. Like they had,
just as easily like if they win 10 of those, that's 10 more points right there. They win a lot of close games, but again, I don't see the Islanders being a team to finish above Carolina. Like there's a world where they could, but is it
not knocking the Islanders? It's more of
there's a very good chance. There's a very good chance Islanders do not finish above the Hurricanes. It's that's a long shot for that one.
Yeah, but as far as this team's direction is, they're looking to contend right now, and also for the next couple of years. They've got Sebastian Aho for another 8 years at 9.75 mil. They got Svechnikov for another 5 years at 7.75. They got Seth Jarvis 8 more years at 7.420. Nice. They got Marty Necas for 2 more years. The Kotkaniemi deal for another 6 is pretty rough at 4.82.
Yeah, I'm almost starting to wonder if he has another year where he's, I don't have his exact stats pulled up from last year, but they weren't great. So I think if he has another, year where he's not performing the greatest and he can't find a way to be a mainstay, like I think he kind of spent most of the year kind of bouncing between third and fourth line because there just wasn't the consistency. I don't hate the idea of, around the trade deadline next year, maybe Carolina attaches a first round pick and, you find a team that could maybe take him. Cause again, like that's a
It's
lot of
like
money for a guy that,
a first rounder is honestly not that steep. If a team is willing to take that, like 6 more years at just under 5 mil, like that's a decent sized contract, that's not a 3 mil contract, a 2 mil contract that you can bury. That's a decent amount. So if a team's willing to take a first just to get rid of that, I might
well,
jump at that if I'm Carolina, honestly.
and
And it like
just
he
throwing
does
it out
bring
there, but
value. He does bring
yeah.
some value. So like, it's not like he's a fringe NHLer taking up that money, but for a team
Mhm.
trying to contend right now, it's tough. But they are making it up in a lot of areas. Seth Jarvis and Svechnikov are making both less than 8 mil, which is pretty good. William Carrier, they got him for 6 more years, making an even 2 mil. That's going to be pretty nice for them, especially with the cap
Quite like
going up.
that.
Like that only gets better. Uh, like
And I wasn't even just saying with Kotkaniemi, like a first year. Like it's probably gonna have to be like a first and a prospect. But I mean, if you're a team like Chicago or Calgary, like Kotkaniemi could probably slot in on your second line, and you could at least give him a chance to try and you know figure it out, and then maybe you can flip him down the road if you give him the right line mates, ice time, whatnot. If you can get him going, but for Carolina, it's just I don't think they need him. And he's taking up, like you said, a decent bit of cap to
yeah,
like. Is he better than a Will Carrier making 2 mil at this point?
I'd say they're
Like,
pretty comparable at the
the only
least.
thing
Like,
Kotkaniemi's got on him is Kotkaniemi can play center,
yeah, and that's
but not
another
that
thing.
great.
Looking at the roster makeup, having him just doesn't make much sense. Like he's listed as a center and a left winger. Every single guy above him on cap wages, so everyone making more money than him on the team, every single one of them, Natchez, Seth Jarvis, Andrei Svechnikov, and Sebastian Aho, all also play left wing, and two of those guys can play center.
Yeah,
Like they have so many guys who could play left wing and center. You know who else plays exclusively those? Jordan Stahl, their captain. Like they've
and they brought in Roslovic.
Yeah, who
Like,
is a very underrated player in my opinion. Like I was
yeah,
surprised Columbus moved on from him to be honest, because he's he's sneaky good. So yeah,
I just don't think they need Kotkaniemi at this point. Like,
yeah, he's not great. It's a big cap hit, and they've got plenty of guys who do exactly what he does, just better, or are paid less to do it.
yeah,
Um,
and I would like to see Kotkaniemi get a chance on again like a Chicago or a Calgary or something. Like,
yeah,
maybe he can figure it out. I think the potential is still there with him. It's just there's nowhere really for him to go with Carolina at this point. Like if he's with Carolina, like we kind of know what he is. I think at this point now,
um,
but we'll see on that. We'll see what
one
happens.
one other guy I want to mention because I've looked around a bit, and there's a lot of conflicting reports on this, so I really don't know if there's an actual answer out there to this. But do you know much about Alexander Nikoshin, and is he going to play with the Hurricanes this season?
Um, so I don't believe he is currently signed with them. Where is he here? So he's 22. I'm not sure how much longer he's signed in the KHL for, to be honest with you. He
It
might only
look
have 1 year left.
it looks like he only has 1 year left, so
Um,
it's hard to tell. I remember at the
yeah,
start of the
expects to
offseason.
have him available at some point later in the season. So once he's done in the KHL, if the season's over, he'll be available to come over, and that's a big addition. If you're Carolina, right, and it's coming down to the end of the season, he signs, he comes over. Like this is a guy that could, I think, almost immediately slot into their lineup. Right, he's 22 years old. Uh, really broke out about 2 years ago in the KHL. In the 22-23 season in 65 games, And again, this is like the KHL. Like this is a very good league in its own. Like this isn't playing over in just juniors or something. Like this is against um, like grown men, right?
Yeah,
And so for a young guy, at this point, he would have been 20, 65 games played, 11 goals, 44 assists, 55 points, was a plus 19.
he's a
And then this,
defenseman.
yeah, and then this
Like,
past season, 67 games played, 17 goals, so went up by six. Assists kind of dipped a bit for 39. Assists, 56 points, but a plus 32.
yeah,
Like those are good offensive defenseman numbers in the KHL. And I mean, the best part, I mean, he's already 22, like I said. So, he's already a lot more mature than some of the 18, 19-year-old guys, right? And he's 6'3", 216 pounds. So he's an
yeah.
offensive defenseman, and he's not a small guy.
And you got to be excited for this guy, especially as a Hurricanes fan, because there's not a team in the NHL I would trust more with developing a defenseman. Like
Yeah.
they just have so many good defensemen. Like you look at any given roster of theirs in the last like 8 years, like they are so stacked for defensemen all the time. Like sometimes their scoring dries up in the playoffs and all that. You can say that stuff, but their defensive core has never really been in question. Um, one thing that I
Yeah.
do find funny, I assume the KHL season just started very recently.
Yeah. He's only played one game so far.
Yeah, he's played one game. No points, was a -2. Of course, on the website Elite Prospects that I'm looking at, it takes just whatever they've played so far and projects the rest of the season. So it projects him to go 65 games with 0 points and be a -130 by the end of the season because
Jeez.
because it just takes that first game and multiplies everything by 65.
Yeah.
You gotta have some sort of better model than that.
I mean, you'd hope so. Like that's kind of interesting, though.
Yeah, but that's an easy
Hopefully,
way to
that's
do it, I
not the
suppose.
case. But
Can't imagine so.
yeah, like that could be a very big addition for Carolina at some point. Um,
Do
if
you happen to know when the KHL season ends?
I believe it ends around. I think playoffs kind of start near the end of February.
Uh, looks like I don't know if it's regular season or playoffs, but it looks like by a quick Google, the season ends on February 26th. So,
That's the regular season,
okay.
and then playoffs. But playoffs isn't like as long as NHL playoffs.
So
So
so he'll probably be done right about time to join the
end
Hurricanes
of
for a playoff run.
end of March, maybe, assuming the team goes on a deep playoff run, and then he can maybe get a couple regular season games in. Or, I mean, um, if his team goes out first round in the playoffs, or they miss, like as early as beginning of March, he could be over with the Hurricanes, and then you could either slot him right into the NHL. You can maybe play him for few games down in the AHL, let him develop a bit, just get used to being over in North America a little bit before you bring him up. Like they have options, and Carolina, we're gonna dive into Carolina's defense. Like they've got good defense, so there's no need to rush this guy. Like you're not in a position where like
Yeah.
we have to bring him in right away. Like you can
No.
slowly get him accustomed to everything, and then when you put him in, like he'll be in the best position to succeed,
Yeah.
which is exactly what they should be going for.
At the same time, I think a lot of teams do take that approach. I think they want to make sure the guy's ready. They don't want to rush him. And I think that is right for a lot of players, even most. But I do think there are some guys that really do benefit from earlier on getting that higher level of competition, learning to play with the big boys a little earlier. And I think generally he's like in this specific situation with Nikishin, I think he could definitely play, especially with another entire KHL season under his belt. Like you said, it's a professional league. Like this isn't juniors. This will be his third year in a full season with them. So after that third year, I think he'll be NHL ready at that point.
I do as well. Like I think Carolina could easily slot him in, and he would be just fine. Like I completely agree there. So it'll be. I'm just interested and curious to see, when he does come over, what the approach is that they do take. Because
Yeah,
again, there's no wrong way to do it. Especially a guy like this, you could put him in the NHL, and I think he would do just fine. You could put him down in the AHL for a couple of games, and then bring him up. There's no wrong way to go about it.
yeah, and I mean, I don't know how it would work. It might be a little difficult for him, but if he comes out, say his team does miss the playoffs and he gets to come over nice and early, they have a little bit of extra time. I don't know if that would be before or after the trade deadline. I assume that would be after. But
Yeah.
if they know he can come over, like some guys are going to come over and make an impact immediately. Like if he's been around the same points rate in the last 2 years, which is already really good. If it jumps even more this year and they're like, okay, we're going to have this guy for the playoffs and he's going to be good.
Yeah.
He's an offensive defenseman. Do you know which side he plays on? Does he play on the right side?
Left side.
He shoots left. Carolina Hurricanes only have one defenseman that they have two defensemen that have 1 year left on their contract. Dmitry Orlov and Brent Burns. Brent Burns is 39 years old. I don't know how much they're thinking about bringing him back, but if you think you have a guy that can slot in at a spot like that, playing a similar style, it might be nice to, move him for the deadline, maybe make a swap with another team, Brent Burns for a third line forward or something like that. And then you can bring in a defenseman.
I don't see Carolina moving Burns now, especially like 1 year left on his deal. He's 39. He's, a tremendous leader on that team and whatnot. And again, he doesn't hurt them. Like, I don't think he's going to, probably the same role as he did the last couple of years, being, again, he's 39. But it's a guy that, again, I just want to double check, but I didn't hear anything last season to make me believe otherwise.
And it could also be a possibility that Dmitry Orlov, who has 1 year left, maybe he has a bit more value because he's only 33 and they want to move him and make some room, depending on whether or not they want to extend him. So
yeah, so Brent Burns, he had 43 points last year. He was a plus 19. Again, he is 39, but it's been over 10 years. It's been 10 years since Brent Burns last missed a game. Like it's a guy you can always rely on who, at least as of right now, has always been able to stay healthy.
Yeah, a bit of an Iron Man there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, like Carolina's going to have options though, which is nice for them, both up front with some of their young
everywhere
forwards coming up, and then like we were talking about their defense. Like there's lots of things to be excited for with this team, and especially with a good cap situation in terms of how their money's kind of spaced out and some of the contracts they have at this time.
We talked about Kotkaniemi, but other than that, I would say Jordan Martinook is a bit overpaid at $50,000 over $3 million per year, but he still does provide solid value to that team. It's just a little bit more cap than you'd like, but he's very slightly overpaid, and Kotkaniemi's a bit more overpaid. But other than that, most of their contracts, they're saving money. So
the other one I don't like, the other contract I don't like is Dmitry Orlov at 7.75. But again, he's on the last year of that deal. It was only a 2-year deal, so you can't hate it that much because again, you got one more year of it. It is worth noting here, out of Carolina's forward core right now, their average age is 26.6. Their defense is 31.7. Their youngest, defenseman projected to be playing on their roster this year is Jalen Chatfield at 28.
Yeah, it's
an older D core. Obviously, it's slowly going to get younger over time with some of the guys coming up, but some good experience if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, and it's a well-built team, and like they still have all 3 first rounders for the next 3 years, all their second rounders. They don't have their own third round next year, but they have the Blackhawks and the Tampa Bay Lightning's third rounder this year. So like they've got a little bit more than just the default draft capital. So they even got stuff there. The only thing is they're projected to be $838,000 over the cap
Yeah.
next year. I imagine they've got something in mind for that. It kind of looks like Jesper Fast might be on LTIR to start the year.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's done for the. He's done for the year
Oh yeah.
already. Yeah, they've already rolled him out. He's on
Damn.
LTIR already.
Well, there you go. That's 2.4 mil. Freed
Last
up.
year was deal as well. It's kind of tough for Fast there.
Yeah, that'll be tough to, it's not going to make you any extra money on your next deal.
Mm.
But we'll move on to their projected lineups for the upcoming season. So that first line is going to consist of Andrei Svechnikov, Sebastian Aho at center, and Seth Jarvis. That's solid.
Yeah,
That's solid.
I got no complaints. You got a little bit of everything in that top line.
It
would have been nice if they still had Jake Gensel, but
yeah,
you didn't want to
it's
stay.
missing that true superstar, but elite talent from all 3 of those guys. So it's it's hard to be too upset about that. They're second.
If they did have Jake Gensel, you got to be looking at what pieces aren't going to be there, right? Like you probably still get Seth Jarvis re-signed, but again, it's not like Seth Jarvis for an 8-year deal is going to take a discount just so Jay Gensel could get that money. Like Marty Necas probably isn't coming back. You've probably already attached a first and a prospect to get rid of Kotkaniemi. Maybe Jordan Martinook. Maybe, I mean, you can't bring in Sean Walker or Goss to spare one of the two. Like, it'd be nice to still have that big stud in Jake Gensel, but you got to look at like your probably 3 pieces on your team aren't there anymore. If you re-signed Gensel,
I think if they re-signed Gensel, they would have had to move Orlov. I think at 7.75 mil, that's a lot of money to free up on a guy that has 1 year left and was
it'd be a tough contract to move though
for you. But it's only 1 year, right? So and especially for a team
if you're attaching something to move Orlov, you might as well just throw in an extra piece and just get rid of Kotkaniemi instead. Get rid of that 6-year deal.
That's fair.
But yeah, they're a deeper team because Gensel left. Yeah. So you got to look at it that way. And what teams are winning cups now? The deep teams. Like that's what you need.
Yeah, and as much as they do have a little more depth, there a little bit of a lack of it is shown here on the second line. Their second line is Bradley Nadeau, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and Marty Necas. Necas as a second liner is great depth on that right side. Their right side is solid all the way through.
Yeah.
Is Nadeau, is he a rookie?
Yeah, like he's 19. He only got 1 game in I think just 1 game at the end of last season. So I don't know. Like I do think he is on the better side of prospects. So I can't really say he's, I can't really say too much, whether that's a good spot for him because I don't really know much about him at the NHL level yet. So
yeah, he had.
It's tough to say, but again, the second line's really hurting if you have Kotkaniemi being your second line center.
Yeah, it's tough, and Nadeau had 46 points in 37 games, 19 of them goals for University of Maine last year. So he produces solid there. I don't know much about that league, but they look like good numbers. We'll see what he can do. Literally 1 game. So like take it with the most massive grain of salt, but in his 1 game he did play last year, he was a -3. That's not
it's not a great welcome to the NHL for him.
It's not awesome, but also how many guys have an awesome first game, so
Well, I mean, also, if your first NHL game, you're playing on the second line with fucking Kotkaniemi, yeah, you're probably going to be a -3.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure why Kotkaniemi's there and not Jordan Staal.
Yeah.
Can Staal just not go as much anymore? Because to his credit, he is what? How
Well, he's
old is
only
he?
36.
36.
Like, it is on the older side, but like, I feel like and nowadays, even when people talk about Stahl, they talk about him like he's 40. Like that, it's like, oh, he's right at the end of his career.
Yeah.
How much more can it's like he's 36. Like and he's got 3 years left on his deal. Like he can still go. So
Yeah. He came in second in the Selke voting last year. I'm pretty sure.
I'm not crazy about his foot speed though at this point now. Like, and again,
It
that's
might be
just kind
that.
of what happens when you get a bit older. So like, again, good defensively, but you know, for your second line center, you probably want a little bit better. I don't know why Natchez isn't just second line center, and then you fill out the wings in whatever way you want.
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't mind Jack Roslovic up there on the second line.
Yeah, give him a chance, see what happens.
But yeah, their third line is William Carrier, Jack Drury in the center, and Jack Roslovic on the right side. For a third line, that's not terrible. I might like a little more than Jack Drury in the center, but that's not awful.
I was actually gonna really like that. Sorry, what was the second line or the third line again? Will Carrier, Drury, Roslovic.
Yeah.
See, like Roslovic on the second line, yeah. Like third line could be pretty decent actually if you rock Carrier, Jordan Stahl, and Martinook. I think
Yeah.
that's a pretty solid defensively built third line, a good
Hard-hitting
energy
line.
line. Like that's maybe the way I would go about it. But hey, you know what? What do I know?
Yeah, Daily Faceoff's got something cooking, I'm sure. And then that fourth line of Tyson Jost, Jordan Stahl, and Jordan Martinook. I mean, that's a really solid fourth line, but
It's a lot of money to be paying your fourth line.
yeah, I got to imagine that if they did roll with these lines, they would be spreading out the ice time a decent amount, like
Kind of
some
evenly
teams.
between like the second, third, and fourth line. And then your
Yeah,
first line, you let them go as much as they can.
yeah, some teams kind of like roll their fourth line like 4 minutes a night, and some teams roll their fourth line like 8 or 9 because some teams are built to roll all four, some are built to roll three, and then every once in a while mix in the fourth. So it would probably be
Yeah.
more of a rolling four lines if they
Well,
went with these.
I'm obviously not gonna, sit here and worry too much about Carolina because they're always a good team. But like looking at their depth, I almost wonder if you have to maybe, you move Svechnikov or Jarvis to the second line with Natchez, and then
Kind
you
of
try and
spread it
find
out.
someone who can fit in with the first line, and then someone that complements the other two on the second line. Like try and space it out a bit more. Like it's a
Yeah.
gross first line if that's the way they do it. What you've already said, that's a great first line. But again, like the depth isn't as strong as they've had it in the past. So I wonder if, yeah, you kind of space it out a bit to
Yeah, and
make it a bit more well-rounded. But one guy you didn't mention that I think could make the team is Jackson Blake. 21 years old, similar to Nadeau. He only got one game in at the end of last season. So, and again, he's 21. So I'd be curious to see in his one game, he was also a -2, which don't love, but interesting enough,
one game.
they are both 5'10". I'm hoping that they've bulked up a bit over the offseason, but they're both listed at 5'10". Nadeau is 161 pounds, and Blake is 152 pounds. So you'd kind of like them to come in a bit more solid, put a little bit more weight on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty light for the NHL. Like, even guys like Marty St. Louis who are really small, they made sure they were solid so that they could,
Yeah.
get in there and forecheck it properly and everything. So we'll see. I'm just now, while looking at their lineups, noticing this, but their second, third, and fourth line left wingers are all like in reverse jersey number order. Nadeau's 29, Carrier is 28, and Jost is 27. That just looks real nice.
So, for any like, because a lot of people is like, oh, when you're a smaller guy, on the shorter side, like I know that feeling. It's hard to put weight on. I mean, Fabian Zetterlund on San Jose, I found this out like halfway through last year, and I was blown away by it. He's 5'10", 220 pounds, like a small little wrecking ball. So like it's obviously tougher when you're a shorter player to put on weight, but it is possible, and it does so much benefits for you. I think, like, again, if you're 150 pounds, like you're gonna be getting thrown around a lot. Like there obviously you can find ways to make it work, but it definitely puts you at more of a disadvantage, especially as a young guy trying to make the team. Like if you're out there in training camp and trying to fight for a roster spot against a bunch of other young guys and they're pushing you around, it hurts your chances quite a bit if you're getting knocked off the puck a lot.
Like there were even guys like Nathan Gerby, who was like, yeah, he's who also played for Carolina. He was 5'4". Like that's like, especially for the NHL, that is short. He's the shortest player in NHL history to play in an NHL game, and he was 5'4", and while he was playing, he was still like even though he's that short, he was like 190 pounds.
He was a muscle hamster.
Yeah,
Do you think Travis Sanheim has ever recovered from that?
Probably not. Probably
when
not
he's getting ragdolled.
like he would fight people, and he would also hit guys too. Like I want to say it was Chara. Was there a clip of him like absolutely decking Chara at some point?
No, it's just the famous picture of them side by side, like at a face off. But I'm trying to remember who it was. There was one where he like blew someone up.
Yeah, like guys like that are like he is legitimately the shortest player to ever play in the NHL, and he could still go out there and battle the puck off guys, blow them up with a hit if his team needed it, because he was just built. Like, because he was like, well, I don't have the height, I'm gonna get a low center of gravity and I'm gonna freaking launch this dude because he's just an absolute beast. So
and like we said, I mean,
that's solid.
He fought Travis Sanheim. Sanheim's 6'4", 222. So he's a foot taller than Gerby, and Gerby was able to ragdoll him around in that fight. Like Sanheim was literally like couldn't get anything going in that fight. So yeah. But again, going back to it, it is nice for Carolina that they do have some younger players that are going to be given the chance to make the team, and if they do, like they could be skilled players, and they could be guys that could maybe slot in their top six and provide some extra offense for
them. Well, we will move on to the defense here. The forwards, they have some bright spots, but leaves a little bit to be desired. But that this, like we were saying before, this has never been a team that was about scoring all the goals. Their first defensive pairing this year looks to be Jacob Slavin and Brent Burns.
And I mean, that's been a solid pair since day one, right? Like, obviously, again, concerns are there with Brent Burns being 39, but again, you as of right now, you can rely on him for all 82 games, and it's a pair that's worked ever since Burns has come over. It's worked for him.
It makes so much sense. Jacob Slavin is, if you ask the majority of the people around the league, they'll say Slavin's the best defensive defenseman in the league, and Brent Burns, I mean, he literally used to be a forward before he started playing defense. Like, he's always been offense first. The match made in heaven. Like, it's perfect.
Yeah.
And this second defense pair is also really solid in Dmitry Orlov and Sean Walker. I love the Sean Walker pickup for them. I
Yeah.
think he's going to be awesome for them. And at 3.6 mil per year for 5 years, I think that's a really solid deal.
Like, is it would I like it more if it was still Orlov and Brett Pesci? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, like Sean Walker's a very solid addition, and I don't think he's that much below where a guy like Brett Pesci is. As long as it's the Sean Walker that we've seen in the last couple of years, like if he
Yeah.
maintains and kind of stays, or maybe even fits in better with Carolina, um, it's a solid replacement, and I don't think it hurts them as much as like it's again a bit of a downgrade, but I've seen a lot of people saying like, "Oh, this is really going to hurt them." No, it's not. I don't think it's gonna hurt Carolina that much.
No. And then that third defensive pair of Shane Goss-Despair and Jalen Chatfield. Uh, is Chatfield more of a stay-at-home defenseman?
I think so. At
I,
least in the
I was
Carolina
pretty sure.
Hurricanes games I've watched. Yeah, he's been more of a stay-at-home guy. So him and Goss
With
pair together,
that makes sense.
I
Like,
kind of like. I will say going from Brady Shea down to Goss spare, that's a downgrade.
yeah,
I think Goss spare can still do good on the power play if given the opportunity, but Brady Shea was really kind of coming into his own. I think he did he lead all defensemen in goals last year, or he was like top three or something. Like he was up there. So obviously losing
I want to
him
say I
is
doubt it,
tough.
just because who was it in Calgary got 20 freaking goals,
Oh, Uyghur, yeah.
Mackenzie Weegar. So I imagine Weegar led in goals, but yeah, I mean
Uh,
did downgrade a bit from last year, but still a very solid decor. Like I got to imagine if you look at the entire top six, it's probably still top five in the league. Like there is not a fringe NHLer to be seen. They've even got Nikishin who could come up uh, later in the season, like we were saying. So
yeah,
they they've really got it set up. They are very clearly a team that is built from the back out,
yeah.
and it hasn't bared fruit yet, but I do think it's a very solid way to build a team,
Oh, so
and it's
I'm thinking
clearly
of
worked for them.
two. I'm thinking of 2 years ago. He was tied for third in the league with Brent Burns and Roman Yossi at 18. So,
Who's
but
that? Brady Shea?
yeah, and then last year he was eighth in goals. So
Pretty damn solid
again,
too.
it's a big loss, but I think Gostisbehere can do all right for them. And again,
Yeah,
like when you've got guys still like Jacob Slavin, I mean, he's going to be playing 27 ish minutes a game. So you just need guys that can go out there and not hurt the team, basically. Let Slavin and Burns log minutes.
and uh, rounding out their lineup, they got the goaltenders. Uh, right here, they say that it's going to be Freddie Anderson as the starter and Pyotr Kochetkov as the backup. They did also sign Martin Spencer in the offseason to a 1-year deal. Actually, they claimed him off waivers, apparently.
Yeah, that's Vancouver put on waivers last year. Or was it Columbus? One of the two. Actually, I think he went from Vancouver to Columbus and then from Columbus to Carolina.
That's kind of what I was thinking. But that's,
How confident are you in Freddie Anderson for them?
I think he's really good. He's 34 years old. He's getting up there.
He'll be
Uh,
35 to start the season.
35 to start the year. It's how many games can he play?
He
Because
only played 16 last year,
yeah,
but he did
that's
go
that's the
13 and
question.
2, a 932 save percentage, a 1.84 goals against, and 3 shutouts
He's a really good goalie when he's healthy,
when he's healthy. Yeah.
but the health has always been a concern. So
Like his last year with Toronto, he played 24 games. And then over his 3 years with Carolina, he played 52, solid, then 34, and then 16.
yeah,
But he's always put up solid numbers.
it's always solid numbers. So if
It's
they
just how
can
healthy.
exactly, so if they can run him and Kachetkov in a tandem, and really manage his minutes and just focus on keeping him healthy, I think they could do some really good work, because I think Kochetkov is going to be a fantastic goalie for them, and Freddie's got a lot left in the tank as long as he can stay healthy. So I think they're really set there in net. But and Spencer Martin's even a pretty solid backup. But
Yeah. Do you
you know,
remember back when Jeff Skinner got moved from Carolina to Buffalo, and a lot of people thought Carolina got like fleeced in that deal? Because it was
vaguely.
they got Cliff Poo, who never became anything. Like he's already over in the KHL, and then they got 2 draft picks, and it was a second and a third. So people are like, for Jeff Skinner being a 30 goal a year guy, you probably would want
Yeah,
more. I mean, the
yeah.
second round pick they used to get Kochetkov, and the third was again the guy we were talking about earlier, Nikishin. Like
That's wow.
that's and that's the thing, right? Is
And the funny thing
you
is,
can't
they
be
did
quick
get
to judge a
fleeced.
trade. At the time, it looked like it. Yeah, I was even on that wagon that they did.
Like, if you're going based on the value, like they got fleeced. That's not, you should be getting more than that for a guy of that talent. But they hit on the draft picks, like,
They hit on him, yeah.
and I think it's, I like, honestly, I would still say they got fleeced, like, in the sense that for the value
They
that
should
they
have
got
gotten
back,
more.
they could have gotten more.
Yeah,
Um, but like, because I don't like judging trades based on what ended up happening with those draft picks, because you can only value a pick at what kind of pick it is. Because, like,
yeah,
if you trade some chump for a 7th rounder, but then your 7th rounder is Henrik Zetterberg, uh,
yeah. Exactly,
you can't
right.
you can't pretend your GM was like, I'm actively trading away Henrik Zetterberg. Like, he didn't he wasn't playing yet. He wasn't drafted yet. Like, you can't there's no way
Yeah,
you could know.
yeah,
Hindsight's 2020. And also, teams, if they kept their pick, would probably have taken different players, especially later in the draft when it becomes way less obvious who's going where. So it's
yeah.
hard to judge, but it is interesting looking back at, oh, Kyle Quincy for a first. That's a very mediocre trade. Oh, now it's Kyle Quincy for Vasilevsky. Now Detroit
Yeah,
looks like some schmucks.
exactly right. Um, Carolina, yeah, still kind of going back to the goalies. That's kind of my biggest worry. Like, I think their goaltend could be very solid if healthy, but again, like I think if Freddie Anderson goes down, you're really relying on Kochetkov. You could be okay, but I don't love it.
I don't love it, but I do think in a pinch, Kochetkov, like, I think he could be that guy. It just,
We've seen
I'm not,
flashes of it.
yeah, I'm not confident he will be, but I think he could be.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, I think he could be. I don't know for sure. Like, and I don't want it to be like a, you know, I want to see Freddie Anderson go down to see what Kochetkov can do. Like, I would like to see a full healthy year from Freddie Anderson, because I think that does
Yeah, more
wonders
than
for
anything,
Carolina.
what can Freddie Anderson do with a full, clean bill of health?
Freddie Anderson also in the last year of his deal.
Yeah. Um, Looking at the points from that this team put together last year, it's actually really weird looking at them compared to other teams that we've done already, because they have some higher up guys than some of these teams, but they have a lot of guys who put up points for them. Like like we've talked about a couple teams already who have like maybe 10 guys who have more than 20 points, and then it really drops off. They had 17 players reach 20 points last year. And number 18 was Jesper Fast, who had 19. Like,
Yeah, you almost had your
they,
entire roster of your regulars all putting up 20 plus. That's the thing with Carolina, though, right? Like, you've got the good players up front, but like they've always had good depth, and it's kind of similar to the Islanders back when they went on their deep playoff runs. Like, it was done by committee. Like, you weren't relying on one line to carry you. Like, you could just roll 4 lines and everybody's contributing every night.
Yeah. And they, good goaltending, real solid defensive core, and they're just such a good defensive team. Guys like Sebastian Aho, Jacob Slavin, they play such a good defensive game, and that's even shown in the faceoff dot here. Sebastian Aho, 54% in the faceoff dot last year with 571 wins. They have Jordan Stahl with a 58% win rate in the faceoff dot with 799 faceoff wins. Kotkaniemi was a 52%. Jack Drury was a 55%. Both of them with over 300 wins. They they have really good numbers in the dot as well, which helps defensively. This
Yeah.
is man, this team would suck to play in the dead puck era. Back then with the Devils when they were running rampant.
Yeah.
They're built like one of those teams. So we'll see what they could do this year. But as far as the two big questions we always ask at the end of these reviews.
Well, very quickly, just two things I want to say. First of all,
Sure.
they're so lucky Kuznetsov decided to go back to the KHL. If they were stuck with his 7.8 cap hit for this year,
Yeah.
They would be in trouble. Secondly, with their forwards, they're going to need some guys to step up into bigger roles. Like you lost Teravainen in free agency. That's 53 points right there, 25 goals. You lose Stefan Nason, who is a beast on the power play and a great energy guy. 14 goals, 37 points.
Where did he go?
He went back to New Jersey. That's a big ad for New Jersey. You lost Michael Bunting, but he was part of the Gensel trade. But again, 60 games played. He had 36 points, 13 goals. Jake Gensel, we know about him in the regular season. He had 25 points in 17 games. And then not even to talk about what he did in the playoffs. That's a lot from those guys that you're losing.
Was he only playing second line minutes?
He
only had 17 and a half minutes of time on ice per game, which isn't nothing, but it's.
Yeah, I think he might have been because I don't think they touched that. I think they left their top line the way it was.
Yeah, it's almost 2 or 3 minutes of ice time less than Jarvis, Aho, a lot of these guys up the top. So,
and then not to mention, I mean,
yeah,
even still, Brady Shea 13 goals, 47 points. He actually led all of their D in scoring. He was above a Brent Burns. So again, I still like their team, but you've got a lot of guys that you're going to need to step up and fill those roles. That's a lot of guys that were eating up big minutes and producing that, you got to find guys that can fill those roles because it's what did I name 5 guys?
Yeah. That's that's
you're gonna need people to step up, and then losing Jesper Fast, obviously it's because that's a guy you could rely on to
just
not put up a lot of points, but eat up minutes and not hurt your team when he's out there. So I'm curious for this Carolina team. I'm very curious.
Yeah, and I would be a bit more worried since they're in the East, but luckily they are in the Metro. I think their team is still more than good enough to secure themselves one of those top 3 spots. So obviously that means I think they are a playoff team. Brundy, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm there with you. If they were in the Atlantic, maybe a different story. I think they're probably still a playoff team.
I think probably, but it's tougher.
I think they're very safely in a playoff spot.
Yeah.
I think probably 1 or 2. I think them and the Rangers.
I think they're solidly going to be 2. Unless the Devils come out with a vengeance this next year and just run the league. I think it's pretty solidly going to be Rangers, Hurricanes, Devils in the Metro.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Also, funny enough, Carolina didn't lose a game in overtime last season. I was just looking at Rod Brendamore's record from last year. 52, 23, 0, and 7. So
those 7 OT losses were all in a shootout?
We're all in shootout, yep. So anytime a game ended in overtime for them, they were the winners. So.
Wow. That's
a fun stat.
That's very interesting. I wonder how much that has to do with guys like that I was talking about, the Ahos and the Jordan Stalls that are so good in the face-off dot, if they just always possess the puck in overtime.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
yeah, like, and there was lots of times where, because obviously Jordan Stall's kind of their big guy. Like, there was a lot of times even in the games I did watch for Carolina where they went to overtime. It would like Jordan Stahl would go out there, win the opening faceoff, and then he's immediately off the ice, and then whoever's hopping on the ice there, like Stahl would go out there,
yeah.
Get the puck for him, get possession, and then off the ice, and then
Yeah.
let the rest of the crew go to work and
More
obviously
teams
score.
are starting to go towards that. I know a couple years ago Tampa started doing that with Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. It would be it would look so goofy because it's like Kucherov, Hedman, and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, and he would take the face off, and then he would swap out for Point or someone. And then last year it was Luke Glendening. Like
Yeah,
you just
it's an
have a
effective
fourth
strategy.
line face off specialist. A guy that you can have relatively cheap, but he plays good defensive minutes, and he also is just great on the dot. So he probably plays like penalty kill time. Like having guys like that is really solid, and I think a lot more teams are starting to pick up those depth centers that can do that.
Yeah, it's an effective strategy, and I like that. It's something kind of new in the game that we're starting to see instead of just the old usual. It's it's fun and it's effective. So
Yeah. I guess all that's left is the predictions for somebody on the team to win an individual award. Uh, do you wanna go first with this? Do you have anybody in particular that is jumping out at you for an award?
I'm kind of debating between two, so I'll let you go first because I'm 99% sure we are going to have different ones for this.
Fair
I,
enough.
I'm very confident actually.
Yeah,
I'm just
I'm
kind of debating
looking.
between two guys here.
Yeah, I there's two that kind of jump out to me. Well, I guess there's another one there, but um, I as much as I want to say Jacob Slavin for the Norris, they don't award the Norris based on defensive merit alone,
Yeah,
and I just don't see it. I
it's about how many points you rack up.
It really is. I I want to say Sebastian Aho for Selke, but I got to go with Jordan Stahl for Selke. He just came
I
in
was gonna
second
say,
for it. He
as long
just came
as
in second
Stahl's
for it.
there, he's gonna steal Aho's Selkie votes.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going with Jordan Stahl to win the Selke. Um, I definitely think he shouldn't have come in second last year. I think he did a great job, but third line minutes, it's tough to say that he was a better forward with defensive aspects to his game than a guy like Austin Matthews, who's got great defensive metrics, but also put up 69 goals and 100 points. So,
Yeah,
but you know, for what he does, Jordan Stahl is still fantastic defensively. So, you know what? Him getting his flowers is fair enough, and that's my
yeah,
pick.
like he's great at what he does. Kind of, he's at the point now where like that's his job. Like when he's out there, it's to be good at face-offs, good in his own end. All of those things, right?
Yeah,
So I've made my decision. Um,
he's made his decision.
I'm looking. Yeah, he's not even listed on here for odds because I want to see what the odds were on him.
Oh, do
Jordan
we got?
Stahl, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's the sixth favorite at plus 1800. So there's a chance for you to be right there. But I'm going to go a bit rogue with this one. Um, I'm going to go with a guy we talked about earlier with the Hurricanes. I'm going with Jackson Blake to win the Calder.
Interesting. I figured you might go with the Calder pick, but I don't know much about their guys who are coming up. Um, Bradley
And
Nadeau, they've got him listed to play on the second line. Like, who knows?
and that's the thing, right? Like I think Jackson Blake's going to get a bit more of a look at him because he is already 21. Um, a little bit older. On Elite Prospects, they have him listed on here as 5'11", 172. So I don't know what he's going to come into training camp. That'll be interesting to see. One thing I like about Jackson Blake, though, he's starting off as number 53. Joe Pavelski came in, was 53. Nikita Kucherov came in 53. And Wyatt Johnston, he's come in and he's 53. So
Yeah,
that's what I'm going with. I think Jackson
fair
Blake
enough.
they're going to rely on him. I think he's going to get a chance in the top 6 if he makes the team. And the offensive skill is there. And so I think you put him with the right guys. I think he could potentially have a good year. You can't bet on him to win the Calder, though. You can bet on Matt Rempe, though.
Of course.
So there's that.
I do genuinely wish I could tell. I wish I could know how much money is going to be bet on him, because people are going to put money on it, even if it's like just a bunch of people put $2. A lot of people are going to put money on it for the long shot, and he's not going to win it. But
No.
like, that's just free money for betting companies.
Yeah, because you know that there's people out there that are going to do it just because they think it's hilarious.
And, I have long shot odds, and what if he heats up? He's not a guy who knows how to put up a ton of points. Like, he's a fighter. That's why we know him. But that's a Jackson Blake. That's a solid pick, and we'll see if he cracks the opening roster.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to be keeping my eye on, because I think he could be a dark horse to win as long as he actually makes the Canes team. He's not one of those guys that's guaranteed a spot, but I think if he works his way up and earns a spot, I think there's always a chance. There's always a chance. There's always a chance.
But that's all we got for the Hurricanes. You want to
moving
talk
on
about
west to your favorite team,
West?
Los Angeles Kings.
Oh, my favorite, huh?
The LA Kings last year, kind of a weird year for them. Fire Todd McClellan. They bring in Jim Hiller. He is their coach going forward now here. A lot of expectations with them, especially after making the big move to bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois. They finished the season with a record of 44 wins, 27 losses, and 11 overtime shootout losses. Third in the Pacific, 99 points. Their over-under points going into the season was 100.5. So one more win and the over would have hit.
Wow, that's pretty high expectations for them. I guess it is a weaker division, kind of, but
here's the interesting thing, though. And we know the story. 3 years in a row, this was the third, going out first round to the Oilers. 2 years ago, they go out in 7. A year ago, they went out in 6, and then this last year, they go out in 5. Goals for 256, 16th in the league, so right smack dab in the middle there. Goals against, though, 215. They were third. Like when we talk about the LA Kings, it's not about their goal scoring power. It's about their defensive game, and winning those lower scoring kind of close games is kind of the story around them.
Yeah, the Kings and the Hurricanes really are kind of the East and West version of each other. Like they can score, but it's a defensive game. They want to win games 3-1. They don't care to outscore all their problems. So it's a strategy that, I mean, it's hard to say it's necessarily worked for them, but I mean, third in goals against, I mean, that speaks for itself. Like they're really good at keeping the puck out of the net. So
yeah,
if they can get around the if they can get around the Edmonton Oilers in the playoffs, who knows what they can do? We haven't seen this team against anybody else in the playoffs in years.
Yeah, and that's kind of a tough spot for them to be in right now. Like it's, really, if you're making the playoffs, you're probably going up against Edmonton again, or you're facing Vancouver. Like, you know, it they're just in a tough spot right now because in round one you're going up against a very very good team, and round two like the same thing. As long as you're kind of staying within your Pacific partners, like they haven't had the luxury of going up against a Central team or another wild card team or something. Like they're in a rut basically.
Yeah.
Going up, just again getting dogged on by the Oilers. Like we talked about how McDavid and Draisaitl just love it that they can just farm so many points in round one against the Kings. Where when Draisaitl cooled off in the Stanley Cup final, he was still up there in goals and points at the end of it all, despite going 7 games with I think only 3 assists or something, because he farmed a shitload of points out of the LA Kings in round one.
Yeah, like just absolutely crushes them. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he was like already like a top 5 all-time point scorer against the Kings in the playoffs. Like he
yeah,
he
him and
crushes them.
McDavid. Bouchard's probably going to be on that list soon if they keep going up against each other. But when talking about the LA Kings and their offseason, right, it started off with a bang. It started off with a big one that we were kind of thinking they probably should do it. It was just, are they going to be able to? And they were. They were able to, get themselves away from the Pierre-Luc Dubois contract early on, moving him to the Washington Capitals for Darcy Kemper. You could argue it doesn't look the greatest in terms of the Kings in the grand scheme of what they gave up for Dubois, and to, move on from after only 1 year and just get Darcy Kemper. But the biggest thing is that's $8 million you cleared up. And that's $8 million more now you got to work with, and you can add other pieces. And it needed to be done, right? Like you can,
it did.
I think in this podcast, we've been pretty critical of Rob Blake and a lot of the decisions he's made as GM. You can debate, is he a good GM, bad GM, should he be fired or not? But the one thing you always got to think about with this guy is how much he loves this organization, how much he cares about this team winning and being one of the top teams in the NHL. You and I talked about it a couple of days ago. For those who don't know, it's a very cool story. I fully encourage you to go check it out. But there was a point in time last season where Rob Blake, the GM, former player, but like he threw on his equipment and he went down onto the ice after practice with Dubois to work with him. Not the coach. Like you've got the GM coming down, strapping on the gear and going out there and teaching Dubois to be harder on the puck, not turn it over, and trying to get him going.
Just doing everything he can to try and jumpstart him, try and get him back into his groove and stuff. And like, you love that from the GM. Like that you can say all the things you want about him. You can't say he doesn't give a shit. Like, dude,
exactly.
Like, I legitimately can't remember the last time I heard about a GM lacing up the skates to go specifically work with a player to try and get something going. Like, that's dedication. I don't think I ever have. Yeah, like I imagine it probably happened back in the 90s or something, but you do not hear about it very often. And
and now, did he probably do it because he's looking at Dubois and is like, my job is on the line with this guy? Maybe, but how many other teams have bad contracts? Like, I haven't heard anything of Craig Conroy going on the ice and trying to figure things out with Huberdeau. No offense to Huberdeau or anything, but like that's just an example for him. But it's like,
was Craig Conroy an NHL player?
Oh yeah,
Of
course he was.
Rob Blake's a little bit more of a name.
Oh yeah, he was in. Was he the one in Love Guru? I think he was.
It might have been.
Except Rob Blake was a defenseman, but in the movie, I think they actually had him playing center. Fun fact there.
But of course.
But yeah, that's kind of how the LA Kings kind of kick-started their offseason, getting rid of Dubois. They re-signed Turcotte, re-signed Trevor Lewis, re-signed Phoenix Copley. You bring in Joel Edmondson on a 4-year deal, 3.8. Don't love that deal, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
They brought in Warren Fogle. Maybe he can come in and kind of teach them some of the weaknesses of the Oilers and how the Kings could maybe beat them in the playoffs for once.
3.5 for 3 years. I actually really like that deal for Warren Fogle. I think
Yeah,
that's
it's
really
it's
not
actually a
bad.
sneaky good deal. You re-signed Quinton Byfield to that 5-year deal, 6.25. I think he's going to have a monster year next year, and that contract is going to just age like fine wine. You re-signed Jordan Spence, and you brought in the best defenseman in the league, whose last name is Jones, Caleb Jones, on a 1-year deal. So nothing super flashy, no major signings or bringing in huge pieces, but
Well, there is one huge piece they brought in, and that would be Tanner Jeannot.
oh, that's right. Yes, they did trade for Tanner Jeannot,
Massive.
clearing Tampa of his contract. That's a nice addition to their bottom six. They get a little bit meaner and tougher, as well as on their blue line. Moving Carl Grundstrom to San Jose in exchange for Kyle Burrows. Again, just another, probably sixth defenseman, bottom pairing guy, but a guy that can throw the body and will fight when need be. So you bring in some tough guys that can throw down, and it makes your team a bit bigger and scarier, which I think is kind of exactly what the Kings needed.
Yeah, and one thing about this team that is in a weird spot because it kind of looked like they were going towards a rebuild. They got the second overall pick, and it looked like they were really starting to fall off, and then they just kind of made a couple really nice moves and came out of it rather quickly, almost too quickly. You got to wonder if, they could have used 1 or 2 more years of getting an even comparable in skill guy to Quinton Byfield, get a couple more high picks, but they're right back in it, and they clearly have a timeline, and that timeline is 5 years. At the end of 5 years, who knows
Yeah.
where Kopitar will be? Most likely retired. He's 37 right now. But in 5 years, that's how many years is left on the Kevin Fiala contract and on the Quinton Byfield contract. And they don't
Yeah.
have a single forward signed beyond 5 years. And they only have one defenseman signed beyond then, and that's Mikey Anderson. So they really aren't tied down to anything.
Yeah,
And
you
it'll
kind of
be
look at it like it's
interesting
a
to see.
5-year window for them to, with their core, kind of when talking about their core, mainly like the guys that have been there from beginning to end, probably going to spend their entire careers there in Kopitar and Doughty. Um, yeah, like you said though, like back when they got Quinton Byfield second overall, right? It was kind of looking like the Kings were going to be going through a rebuild, right? 2017, they did get Gabe Velarde, 11th overall. 2018, they got Rasmus Kupari, 20th overall. We know the story with those two, but then it was looking like the rebuild was coming. You get Alex Turcotte 5th overall. You get Quinton Byfield 2nd overall. Then you get Brant Clark 8th overall. And it was like, now the Kings are back all of a sudden. Like it was a quick 3-year retool. Obviously, unfortunately, Alex Turcotte hasn't quite panned out yet at 23 years old now for where 5th overall pick should be. Quinton Byfield, we know, is very solid, only going to get better. And I expect we'll see a full year of Brant Clark in the NHL this year.
Yep. And also, very specifically went out and double checked again on for him. He is not Calder eligible this year.
Yeah, I was just looking at that.
He has played 2 seasons with more than 6 games in a professional league, so he is ineligible for the Calder Trophy this year. But it will essentially be his rookie season still, because he's, I believe the most he's played a single season was like 15 games or something. So
Yeah, he played like 15 or 16 last year, and that was it.
yeah, so
I
he's
expect him to be a mainstay in their lineup.
Yeah,
But
so
at this
he should be
point,
playing at least 60, 70 games this year, hopefully. Um, I'm a big fan of his game. I think it is going to translate to the NHL. I think it's just going to take a little extra time, but I think he's going to be phenomenal. Like, we're talking about all these guys, how, the only guy signed beyond 5 years is Mikey Anderson. 2 years left on Brant Clark's ELC. I don't doubt that they try and get him locked in for 8
yeah,
when they can extend him. If he hasn't done a lot after this year and they want to, I could see him wanting a bridge deal so he can prove himself a bit more and make more money on that 8-year extension. But
yeah.
if I'm the Kings, I really want to get him locked up.
You just want to get him locked up because that's your Drew Doughty replacement.
Yeah.
Right, like say Drew Doughty has 5 years left in him, takes him till he's 39. At that point, Brant Clark, he's going to be 26. He's going to be right and entering his prime, and then he's going to be, their top guy on the blue line moving forward. Even potentially within 2 to 3 years, he might already pass Drew Doughty, and then Drew Doughty's kind of, still logging big minutes on the second pair, but like Brant Clark's your guy. Like that's your long term replacement for Drew Doughty. So I agree. Like if you're the Kings, I think as soon as you can, I think you try and lock him up for 8 years if he's willing. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big part of their group moving forward.
Do you know, am I crazy or like, did they
Yeah.
get an insane bargain with Alex Turcotte's new deal? Because Turcotte has 3 years left at $775,000.
Yeah, they just signed him to that. Yeah.
And yeah, that's not his ELC. That's his second contract.
That's a 5th overall pick coming off his ELC and
But
re-upping for a brand new ELC, basically.
he might have taken a pay cut. Like, there's other guy. Alex Lafreniere is still on his ELC. He's making $100,000 more. Like, he couldn't even have cashed in on his 2-way contract here.
Yeah.
Like, I do believe it is actually a 1-way contract. I wonder if that's part of it. He like really wants to be able to stay on the team, but that's crazy that he was.
It is an interesting deal. Like that's you don't see stuff
It's not
like
even.
this
It's
very
not
often.
even a 1 or a 2 year prove it. It's a full 3 years. He's still an RFA at the end of it, so it gives the team all the power. I just don't know why he would have gone with it because, to be fair, like he, 5th overall, he has not panned out yet. Like he has not been good at the NHL level. He in his first season he played 8 games, 0 points. Second year, 4 games, 0 points. Last year, 20 games, 4 points. That's not great.
Yeah, it's really not.
But he was +6 in those 20 games last year, and +5. He had 6 penalty minutes, but he's 23 years old. He can still keep improving. He can still get better, and I don't know. Does he have so little faith in himself that he really thinks he's not gonna be able to hold on to a roster spot, like at any
Yeah,
point in the
right.
NHL? Like I don't know
It's
why you
very
don't
odd.
take the 775 for 1 year, bust your ass, give it all you got, and then try and re-up from, even if you get up to 1.5 mil next year, that's double the amount. Like seeing this reminds me of when I first saw it because I was so shocked when I saw it the first time because I was like, is this his ELC? I thought he played in the NHL. And then I realized it wasn't, and it seems crazy because, yeah, just him being at the RFA at the end and the 3 years, like, if dude went to free agency, somebody would pick him up for $1 million just to see, just to see
Yeah,
what happens. He's a 5th overall pick not that many years ago, so that one was
it's
really
very weird.
confusing from the player side, but
Yeah,
you know
it's
what?
a very odd deal like this one.
Yeah, so we'll see what how that ages and what he does. I really hope he breaks out this next year. At least enough that he can become a guy who plays a full 82 for the Los Angeles Kings and not the Ontario Reign. their AHL team, but
Yeah.
uh, do we want to get to their line combinations?
Yeah, just wanted to quickly say, the Kings have all in the next 2 years. They have all their draft picks except this year, 2025. They do not have their second round pick. They have 2.1 in cap space right now. The only guy they have currently unsigned is Arthur Kaliev, who is an RFA. I I don't know what's going to happen with him. There's talks that he could be re-signed. There's talks that he could be traded. I think he has requested a trade. Um, so we'll see
Wait,
on that.
they have their first rounder for this year?
Yeah.
How'd they swing that? They traded for Tanner Jeannot.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
when would they have gotten rid of it? Oh, okay, I see now. I got you
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it's rough out here. Nice
Um,
modified no trade over there.
they're retaining money on Mike Richards until the end of time. And they have 2.025 in retained salary just on this year on Ivan Provorov. So they have a little bit of money to work with. Again, I think Kaliev probably gets traded unless they can really find a way to convince him to come back. Um, we'll kind of see how that shakes out. But moving on, yes, to their projected lines going into next season. First line, you have Alex Laferriere and Adrian Kempe on the wing, centered by none other than Anze Kopitar.
That's
I mean, if you got Kopitar as your first line center, like you have to like that line, just because you know Kopitar's going to be 70 plus points. He's going to be one of the best defensive centermen in the league.
yeah.
Adrian
It's
Kempe, dark horse to maybe put up 50 goals this year. Like this is a guy that is just a beast. Like I think he's at least
is he a
touching
goal
40.
scorer?
Oh yeah.
Like he had 28 goals last year, but 75 points. He led the team in points, but he was third on the team in goal scoring. Like
It took a bit of a dip, but 21-22, he put up 35, 22-23 in 82 games. He had 41 goals,
okay.
only 26 assists that year. So he kind of flip flopped a bit, dropping down to only 28 goals, but his assists went up to 47.
I thought Kevin Fiala was a bit more of one of their top finishing guys.
He definitely is. Like Fiala is still definitely up there. I mean Kevin Fiala, like
Interesting, he's not slated
he's
to be that
only
top line.
he's only put up 30 or more goals in 1 year, and that was his last year with Minnesota, putting up 33. He was on the cusp last year, like you said, at
Yeah,
29, but like
29.
Trevor Moore, he tucked 31.
Yeah,
That was a nice bright spot for them. And then Alex Laferriere, again, he's kind of more of a shit disturber. Kind of maybe a discounted version of Seth Jarvis, kind of being on Carolina's top line. Like I think he kind of plays a similar style to Seth Jarvis. Just the skill and the point totals maybe aren't quite there on the same level.
yeah.
But he's a young guy, and that could very well change. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
his rookie
22
year
years.
last year. What was last year's rookie year? I think so.
I want to say so. I'll check it here.
Yeah, 20. Yeah, so 23 points in 81 games. So they're probably expecting him to take that next step this year, hopefully.
Yeah, and yeah, he's interestingly enough, he was a minus 14 last year in 81 games on a team that, like we said, was third best in the league for goals against. Like,
Yeah,
there's like nobody else on this list who's a minus, let alone a minus 14. Looks like that was the worst on the team. And that's including Pierre-Luc Dubois' minus 9. So
yeah. So
that's
there's some growing pains and stuff he's got to work through. And I got to imagine putting him with Kopitar is going to help improve his defensive game.
I wonder if that's
If
kind
that
of
is what
the
they
thought
do.
process.
Yeah, right. Like your worst offensive player, you put him with your best and hope, and then he can learn it from Kopi, and Kopitar can also help in the areas where maybe Laferriere kind of fails to do what's expected of him in the defensive zone. But moving on to their second line, you got Quinton Byfield at center. Solid.
Last year was his rookie year. Played 81 games, but it was his first year playing any games in the NHL.
Yeah, Leferrier.
Yeah, it's Lefebvre.
Okay, yeah. Second line, Quinton Byfield centering Kevin Fiala, and they do have Arthur Kaliev on here. Again, I don't know if Kaliev's going to be here, but if he does, I do actually kind of like him slotting in on the second line there with Byfield and Fiala. I think that's a very it's a line that I think is going to put up some decent point totals.
Yeah,
you're kind of hoping they're in the offensive zone a whole lot more than they are in their own end.
I'll be honest, like, if they do re-sign Kaliev and they go with these lines, I wouldn't be incredibly shocked if this second line outscored the top line. Like, Quinton Byfield is poised to take a massive step. For my money, Kevin Fiala might be their most talented offensively forward right now on the team. Like, I love Kevin Fiala's game. Kaliev's solid. Like, if those three can be clicking, like, I could see this, ending up being like basically the first line that, people list as the second line by the end of the season.
And that's the thing, right? Like we talked about Brandt Clark, he's going to be the one to surpass Drew Doughty and be kind of the next Drew Doughty for the team. That's the same thing with Quinton Byfield, right? It's only a matter of time before eventually he's taken the throne from Kopitar, and he's their guy. And we could start to see that happen as early as next season potentially. I think the sky's still the limit for Quinton Byfield. I think he's continuing to just get better.
Yeah, so, I think as soon as after this year or next year, he's the guy people are saying, is he number one in a 2020 draft redraft? Yeah. Obviously, that would mean he'd have to, people would have to hold him in higher regard than Tim Stützle, who's pretty ubiquitously the number one guy from that draft right now.
Or your favorite guy in the league.
Oh, you know me. Oh, Timmy Stu.
No. Lucas Raymond.
Oh, sorry. I was like, yeah, you know me. I love him. I don't talk about him diving.
Yeah, true.
Lucas Raymond's a beast, though.
Moving on to the third line, I actually really like this third line.
This has got to be like a top 5. Might be crazy, but like top five for a third line.
Top 5.
Like, yeah. It's really good.
Philip Deneau centering Trevor Moore and Warren Foegele. I mean, Trevor Moore just tucked 30 last year. Well, 30, more than 30. Having that on your third line, again, with Philip Deneau, who I think is one of the better defensive centers in the league, kind of similar when we talked about Aho. He doesn't kind of get the recognition because he's like behind a Kopitar. Like, I feel like more people were talking about Deneau in his defensive game when he was with Montreal because he was kind of like that guy. Whereas now he kind of has to play second fiddle behind Kopitar. But then, and then Warren Foegele, I think can be a very solid add for them. Play a good power forward game. Like, I really do like that.
I love this second line, or this third line. Like, they can score. They're going to be great defensively. Like, that's everything you want out of the third line.
Yeah, I could not agree more with you.
Looking at this team, they are built for defense first, in a similar way that Carolina is, but they do it with they have so many responsible defensive forwards. They didn't build from the defense out. They built from the forwards at back, but they built it with defense still in mind. So it's a very interesting strategy for putting together a team. But like, I really like this forward core. Yeah,
the fourth line,
it leaves
you could be crazy about it. I think there's a lot of uncertainty with it. You have Tanner Jeannot and Akil Thomas on the wing, centered by Alex Turcotte. I mean, we're still sitting here hoping to see that breakthrough from Akil Thomas and Alex Turcotte. Like, the skill is there. It's just now we need to see it translated into the NHL.
Yeah.
Um,
You could
I
almost
mean,
say something similar for Janot. I think he is solidly an NHL talent. I don't think they
yeah,
need to worry much about him falling out of the lineup. I think his play style really lends to a bottom six scoring and checking guy.
yeah,
Like he has a really underrated shot, but yeah, like it's a lot of guys that the promise is all there. It needs to click. And if these guys can have chemistry together, like they can really be one of those lines that is kind of more than just the sum of its parts. Like they don't add up their value, they multiply. Like their chemistry makes them better than they are on their own. And if they can do that and all improve together, like all of a sudden, like if that really kicks off, like Tanner Jeannot is going to be wanting to move up in the lineup. Turcotte, who knows where he could end up in the lineup? Like they they might have some real skill on their hands if they can put it together properly.
yeah. And the thing is, right? Like I think there's a lot of potential with this fourth line, but again, it's also like if you're a team that you're trying to be that more defensive team, one of the better defensive teams in the game, and your aim is to win those low scoring close games. I don't love it for a fourth line.
How
And
many minutes can you give these guys if they're not there yet and they're not particularly good defensively?
exactly. And again, a big part of it, I still believe Arthur Kaliev is going to get traded. And if he does, there's an opening on that second line, whether you move up a Trevor Moore or Warren Fogle, or you give the chance to an Akil Thomas or an Alex Turcotte. And
I think it's
then
hard not to for Trevor Moore,
you
31 goals last year.
yeah.
But
Exactly, right. And then you bring up like a Jack Studnicka and you give him a chance to roll out on the fourth line or whatever, or you bring in someone. Um, we didn't even mention Trevor Lewis is uh is also signed. So if Kaliev goes out the door, you throw whoever on the second line and you move whoever up from the fourth line, and then Trevor Lewis comes in. He's your fourth line center, and you're just fine with him there.
yeah,
Like he does not hurt you.
very solid forward core there from the Kings. Honestly, I like this forward core more than I thought I would.
Yeah, right. Like there's nothing like aside from Kopitar, like there's nothing that jumps out and like right now at this moment, and like the flashy names, kind of like with a team like a Carolina or not, but like there's no area that I look at and I'm like that's a weakness and that's gonna hurt them.
Yeah.
They don't have that, and I think that's exactly what you want. You've
I
got
think that
solid
first
NHL
line
players, top to bottom.
left wing being Alex Lafreniere isn't great. He might be that guy, but right now he's not.
I was gonna say
Um,
I'm not crazy about it, but again, it's a young guy. It's the same way as I'm not you know knocking on again going back to Carolina, but like with a guy like a Bradley Nadeau project on the second line
yeah,
because I think he's going to be better than last year. To what level? I don't know.
and
Does he play on the first line? I'm not crazy about him there, but like if he fits the role and uh, makes it easier for guys like Kopitar and Kempe, I'm all for it.
and
I'd give it a chance at least,
yeah,
but I am
even
kind
if
of with you.
even if he is third line material, you know what? Kevin Fiala up to the first line, Trevor Moore up to the second line, and then Lafreniere on the third line. That still looks
Yeah,
pretty damn good. So
yeah.
they have options, which like it doesn't look great at the top there, but like we were saying, how sick that third line looks. They can move
How
any
great
of
the
these guys
second
up,
line is, and
like
and again,
and
the
push these guys up.
unknown with guys like Turcotte and Thomas, like
Yeah, who
they could
knows?
burst onto the scene and they could both drop 40 points this year, and then it's like
Yeah,
shit. There's two more studs you're adding in.
this team has a lot of potential, like a lot of room for growth for a team that's already been in the playoffs recently. Like Quinton
Yeah,
Byfield, like I don't think people are expecting it, but I don't think a ton of people would be shocked if he dropped 100 points. Like he is really good. Like I don't think he does, like I said, but I think he definitely has the potential to get there at some point. And like if he is undeniable to start the year with in the first 20 games and he ends up being on that, maybe they shove him on the left wing on that first line because he's just that good. He needs those minutes. And he's on that
Hmm.
first power play unit. Like as soon as this season, he could overtake Kopitar as the guy here.
Yeah,
And
I
like
don't
I
in no
doubt
world
he
do
makes
I see
100
him
points.
dropping 100 just because that would be an insane jump from 55
Yeah.
up to 100. But I think point per game is right in there. Like I could easily see him as an 82 and 82 guy.
Yeah, that's
Um,
much more based in reality, but like I wouldn't be like my head turns into a steam whistle. And I'm freaking out about him hitting 100 if he decided to. Like, especially
mhm.
in this last year, everyone's, for a bit there, people were wondering, where's Byfield? People were talking about him when he got drafted. People have been saying he's good. Where is he? And he kind of showed up this past year. So,
Yeah.
and
And that's kind of what you
underratedly,
tend to
one of
see
the
with
best plus
those
minuses
bigger
on the
guys.
team. Like
Yeah.
he's not a all offense, no defensive minded young guy like a lot of young guys are when they come to the league. Like he was a plus 19. Uh, looks like Matt Waugh was plus 21. Mikey Anderson was plus 22. Yeah, looks like yeah
Mhm.
he was the third best plus minus on their team last year in 80 games.
And that's their best forward for plus minus.
Yeah, yeah. Adrian Kempe was second with plus 13. Like so he's good in both ends of the ice. So yeah, I think they've got a real bright future there with him especially. I think he's going to take a big jump, like you said, probably a lot closer to 70 to 80 points.
Well, and the big thing is, right, is like Quinton Byfield, like he is 6'5", 225. Like he's a big guy. He's a power forward.
Yeah,
And even though he's drafted second overall, those guys tend to take a bit more time to develop. Look at a Tage Thompson, right?
yeah,
Like there's
and he
people that
was
were
drafted a
already,
year early. Like
yeah,
he was like whatever it was, like 10 months younger than everyone else getting drafted that
yeah,
year.
because he was an August guy. So yeah, and so now that he's hitting his stride, he's going to continue to get better. Um, just and even when looking at it, like um, did I want to double check where this guy went to? Um, oh yeah, so I mean, losing Blake Lizotte does kind of suck because he was a very solid depth piece for them, and they obviously did lose Victor Arvidsson. But like, still looking at it, it's like there's no glaring holes still, and even I mean Pierre Luc Dubois, like I mean he still put up 40 points last year. He was still filling a center position for them. Like they've done a good job at still rounding out this team to be solid from top to bottom. And again, like you can move guys up and down the lineup and try out different things. So I'm excited for this forward core on how it kind of works out for them.
Yeah, they look like they're going to be good.
Moving on to the defense, their biggest loss on the blue line was you did mention already, kind of near the top of their plus minus. Matt Waugh leaving. That is a tough one. But again, you lose him on the right side, but now you're getting Brant Clark coming in, so you know I
That's
think
going to
you're
be
okay
nice.
still. Their top pair, Mikey Anderson and Drew Doughty.
Solid.
It's solid, yeah. Like Mikey Anderson again isn't should he be a top two defenseman? Probably not, but he did lead the team in plus minus last year, and he's worked out as the perfect partner to put with Drew Doughty. Like it's one of those things like it just works. And if it
Yeah.
works, why would you go away from it?
Yeah, you don't need to mess with it. And you know what? If he's not your second best defenseman, that means that you've got a better defenseman playing down in the lineup, which
Yeah.
never really hurts. So you
Their
got
second pair, Brant Clark playing with Vladislav Gavrikov. I think Gavrikov's actually a perfect
that's a great
pairing
switch.
partner to start out with Brant Clark, just because Brant Clark we know is obviously going to be a bit more offensively inclined. That's just kind of his, kind of the defenseman he is. And having like a strong defensive partner with him in Gavrikov, I think is exactly what um, it is what you want to have to help Brant Clark kind of as he develops
Yeah,
and plays what hopefully should be his first full season in the NHL.
Yeah, and I think they've set themselves up nicely to have options here because if it's not quite working out there, I think you can swap Anderson and Gavrikov and then maybe put
Yeah,
Mikey Anderson with Brant Clark and go Gavrikov and Doughty. And I think that would still work just fine on
yeah,
both lines. So if, Clark falls into a bit of a slump or he's having issues, you have a couple options to try and kickstart him and help him get going. So I
yeah,
I like that. I like that top four.
yeah. I think it's a very solid
Bit
top
of a
four.
question mark with Brant Clark already being there, but he has the talent. We know he does.
Yeah,
Whether he can put it together, we'll see.
yeah. And then looking at the third pair, Joel Edmondson and Jordan Spence, I like it.
It's fine.
I know there's a lot of people that weren't crazy about them signing Joel Edmondson, especially to the deal that he got. But again, like you're bringing him in to be a bottom pairing defenseman. Like you're not bringing him in to be like, yeah, you got to go log minutes in the top four and be a top penalty kill guy. Like he'll still get some penalty kill time, but he's a third pairing guy.
Yeah.
So like how much how much do teams kind of sit there and be like, fuck, that left side guy on our third pair just kills us every game? Like, no. And Joel Edmonds, he's a defensive guy. He's literally going to go out there, play a solid defensive game, and that's exactly what you want out of a third pair guy, really. Like when you've got guys like Jordan Spence, Drew Doughty, Brant Clark, like all the guys on the right side, you don't need Joel Edmondson racking up points. You need him to be out there and just be a solid
Just shut him down.
defensive, just do exactly what he's done his whole career.
Yeah. Yeah. I like their decor. The third pair leaves a little bit to be desired, but I don't think that's going to be what hurts him at all.
Yeah, no, and I mean Jordan Spence, like he kind of got his first full season NHL last year. 71 games played, 2 goals, 22 assists for 24 points. Like he's only 23. Like there's still room for him to grow and develop. I'm curious to see how their power plays may look. Just because you've got Drew Doughty, Brant Clark, and Jordan Spence, like kind of seeing how they make that work with all three of them. I'm a little curious on how that maybe works for him.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like they have it scouted to be Doughty on the first power play unit, Clark on the second, and it looks like that's it for defensemen.
Which I mean, if you're going to go with two defensemen, like I think those are the two you do go with,
Yeah.
and then maybe the occasional time you give Spence a look out there on the power play. But overall, again, kind of similar with the forwards. Like there's no super massive glaring holes, and you do have the luxury of like nothing set in stone, right? Like you can move a couple of guys around, and I think it could work out even better than what we're looking at. Like there's definitely the potential for that.
Yeah.
And then lastly, moving on to the goalies, we've already kind of talked about him. The new guy coming in, Darcy Kemper. I think it's not the same Kemper as years past. I don't think at this point now, but it's still a very solid goalie, and I think it is an upgrade from Cam Talbot, especially in terms of the team that's going to be in front of Kemper. Like, I think there's actually a very good chance for Kemper to have a really, really solid season.
I think he is going to. He has consistently been very good over almost his entire career. Last year he had a very much a down year, but uh, I he's been great on some bad teams. I on a team that's this good defensively, I got to imagine he's going to put up great numbers for the Kings, or at least league average. At least I would think.
Yeah. At the bare minimum, it's going to be league average, I think. The backup goalie, David Riddick, he was a great backup for them last year. Like,
Yeah,
I think he really had a nice bounce back year and has found a spot where he can be stable. And then, like, so that's a solid starting and backup goalie. In the AHL, you got Phoenix Copley, who I think can still be a very solid backup if called upon, and he can start a few games and not going to hurt you. And you've also got Eric Portillo, just re-signed to a 3-year deal, very similar to Alex Turcotte. He's 24 years old, 3-year deal, 7, 8, 3. It's a cheap contract for 3 years for a goalie. He is 24. He's 6'6", 224. So he's a big goalie. He played his first full year of pro hockey last year, playing in the AHL. 39 games played, 24 wins, 11 losses, 2 shutouts, a 2.5 goals against, a 918 save percentage. Like,
that's not
so
bad.
you've got options. Like you've got your starting goalie, you've got your backup, you've got a great third string, and you've got a young prospect goalie who is in his first year already put up solid AHL numbers. So if you've got a couple goalies that get injured, I think you're still in good hands.
Yeah,
Like I don't think goaltending's a concern for the Kings this year. Whatever goalie you put in.
No, like this, rather similarly to the Hurricanes again. Like they don't have any one point that is a very obvious hole in this lineup, top to bottom. Like there's some spots, but it's pretty well put together. I'm liking this team.
So that leads to the question: do you think the LA Kings make the playoffs?
I do think the LA Kings make the playoffs.
Yeah. I was a little skeptical at the beginning of the offseason, kind of looking at this team, but kind of looking how it's all shaken out and where they're at now. Yeah, I like it. I think a big part of it, I really do actually like bringing in Warren Fogle into that forward core. I like bringing Tanner Jeannot. I think that's what they needed. A guy we didn't even talk about with their defense, Kyle Burrows, who probably is their 7th defenseman now. If there's an injury, you can bring him in, and he can play a solid defensive game for you as well. Again, he's not going to be out there to score goals. He's going to be playing LA Kings hockey. Just good defensive, helping out your goalie, keeping pucks out of your net. I really do like where this team is looking at right now.
Yeah, it's really making me wonder how the West is going to shape up for the playoffs, because, I think we've both said at certain times that there's a decent chance the Central gets both wildcard spots, but Vancouver, Edmonton, I think they're both getting in. The Kings and the Knights,
yeah,
that's going to be a bit of a battle.
Yeah,
and maybe one gets in and the other gets a wild card spot. Maybe one misses. But
I would love to see these two, like the Kings and Knights in the playoffs, go up against each other. I'm just tired. Like, I get the format of the playoffs and how the NHL, wants to create these rivalries. I'm tired of. It's like you still get a lot of new matchups and some interesting ones, but like I'm so tired of seeing Edmonton and LA. I know Edmonton fans probably love it, sure. But just as as an outside hockey fan, it's just I want to see LA go up against Vegas. I want to see them go up against Vancouver. I just want to see something different for this Kings team, because as good as this team looks, like if they go up against Edmonton, they're cooked.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm not a fan of the playoff format at all currently.
Yeah, no, I would like to see it changed.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you. I did see someone throw out the idea. I don't like this idea. I think it could be cool. But basically it was I don't know exactly how it works for the regular season. Like, I don't know if you kind of stick with the same thing of like the top 3 teams from the division, the wild cards, but it's like when you put the teams together in the playoff bracket, it's like 1 versus 16, 2 versus 15, and then you just do that. But I'm not.
Do you know what
crazy
they do right now
about that? What do you mean?
Like, how does the seating work right now? Is it just the wild cards face the top 2 in each the top 1 in each
So
division?
wild card 2 takes on like the top team in the best team in that conference, whether it's the top team in like say the Pacific or Central. So like you technically are still actually getting the 1 versus 8. Like that people are like, oh, I'll bring back the 1 versus 8. You're still getting that. It's just listed as, Pacific 1 versus wildcard 2 type thing. or Central 1 versus Wild Card 2.
Yeah, so you
Like, you're
could
still
potentially
getting
get
that, but
outside of division, but not outside of conference.
yeah, even if they did, and again, I know they love doing the interdivision rivalry type things, but like even if you did, you know, the top team in the conference goes up against Wild Card 2, uh, and then the winner of the other division plays Wild Card 1. But what if you even did like Pacific 2 takes on Central 3, and then like Central 2 takes on Pacific 3 or something? Just to mix it up in some way, just to get away from
Maybe.
seeing the same matchups that we're kind of starting to see.
Yeah. I would also I would really like to see something like the top teams, so the top 4, the top team from all 3 or 4 divisions, they get to pick who they play in the first round. Out of the teams obviously that make the playoffs, but I think it would be really fun for those top 4 teams to be like your bonus for being the top team in the regular season is that you get to pick out of these other teams who you want to play. And so Dallas
That
was
could be
first in the
fun.
Central last year. Vancouver was top of the Pacific last year. Say they both say we want to play Nashville if they make the playoffs. Then Dallas would get to because they had more points. And obviously,
Yeah.
if they tied in points, you go to wins, you go to goals for, you go to whatever. They already have tiebreakers in place. But
Yeah.
I think it would be a lot of fun. And you know what? That creates rivalries way better than this shitty playoff format because this team was one of the best. And then they said, we think we can beat the crap out of this team. That team is going to go, well, fuck you. I'm going to beat you in the playoffs now. Like now this team is all full of piss and vinegar because they literally said, you're the worst in our conference at hockey and we're going to beat you in the first round. Like that's
Mind
way
that idea.
that feels like a way better way to start a rivalry than we ran into Edmonton 3 years in a row just because format. Like I feel like that would be a lot of fun. And
And what do you
like
do for the rest of the teams though? Like
it
that's the
just
thing, right? Then how does the rest of the matchups get determined?
you could just go, from then on out, it's 1 versus 8 type deal. Whoever's out after those first 4, whoever's got the 5th highest points will play the lowest points percentage team in the playoffs that didn't get picked, and you just keep sorting that out. Split off into each conference as well. Like, you just because Dallas had most in Central, they don't get to say we want to play Washington. Like, I feel like they would have to pick within their conference still, not their division. But yeah, I think then the remaining, I guess it would be 4 teams would just be top versus bottom, and then the 2 middle teams by points percentage or
Which
overall
which
points.
which could be fun.
Yeah,
I could get behind something along the lines
it's a
of
little
that.
extra personality that the NHL doesn't really have. Like
Mm-hmm.
that would be such a fun, like there's the day where they have the final game of the regular season. Now everyone's at 82, and then the very next day they could even do it draft style. They could either do it in the Sphere or they can do it just some conference call on TSN. But either
Yeah.
way, they can bring in the GMs. Hell, if they want to have the captains announce it, that could be awesome. And they go and they say, "Yep, we're picking to play the Minnesota Wild." And like
Yeah.
you can make it a little bit of an event. You could do some fun stuff with that. Hell, if you want to get a couple of awards out of the way, you could do some regular season trophies if you want on that same show. You can say,
Well,
"Hey, we know who won the Art
here's the
Ross now."
thing, right? Is like it's like a 48-hour turnaround. Like from the last day of the regular season, it's like the season ends on one day. You've kind of got one day in the middle, and then playoffs start. So it would almost have to be like the moment the the last regular season game ends, which is usually a late one out on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Within like an hour, you got to have teams be like, this is who we're playing. So then they can make the schedule and they can start getting, the ball kind of rolling for that.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea. I think it'd be fun to see that and kind of see how it would shake out. The way that I would kind of like to just do it is you just do, especially with, the way we're kind of seeing it with divisions, kind of especially like, when you're looking at how good the Atlantic is compared to the Metro, more so than Pacific versus Central. You just do the top 2 teams from each division. Like, that's what you're fighting for. You're fighting for a top spot in your division. Basically, whether you want to do it like that team clinches, you get home ice advantage or not, but it's like the top 2 teams from each division, and then you've got 4 wildcard spots. And then you could decide what you want to do. If you want to do out of the 4 teams that are at the top of their divisions, is it the top one plays the last wild card spot? The second best team just plays like the second lowest wild card spot. Whatever way you want to do it. Or if you just then say, okay, that's our 8 teams. We're just doing 1 versus 8. Like you've got a couple options you can do with it, but I like the idea of more wild card spots, as opposed to having,
you know what,
like 6 spots in each side guaranteed by divisional teams, by like just being a top 3 team in your division. I would like to do just the top 2, and then there's 4 wild card spots. Like, that'd be sick if 2 Metro teams get in, but you've got 6 Atlantic teams. Like, that would be sick.
And it could be realistic this year. Like, I really like that idea. And then I started thinking, you know what? Why do we need division spots at all? So it would be an insane scenario. But if, say, the Montreal Canadiens finish 8th in the Atlantic, and they are higher than every team in the Metro, why the hell shouldn't they be in the playoffs? Like, that would almost never happen. Don't get me wrong, but like,
just for like a hypothetical, for argument's sake.
But yeah, for argument's sake, I think we're really past the point of needing any division spots. Like, just make it based on points and based on conference. Like,
yeah, just because I hate the idea of like, the team that just misses out on wildcard 2 is like right on the same level with a team that's 3rd in their division, but only 3 teams from that division get in.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I like it more like if you're in the top 2, okay, sure. But then like 4 wildcard spots to really be like, it's anyone's game for those spots. Like, I just really hate the idea of only 2 wildcard spots to be there for some teams to fight over.
Yeah, I completely agree. I like that. And especially this season in particular, that could very realistically come into play with the Atlantic being on the upswing and the Metro's kind of on the downswing. So, yeah, I love that idea.
Because I can't think off the top of my recent memory, but like, I would love for someone to like DM us and let us know if this has happened. But like, so what happens if it's, the top team in the Central, like, or say last year, like Vancouver won their division, they played Nashville, and then Edmonton played LA. Say Nashville had more points than LA, and Nashville and LA won. Who gets home ice advantage in the second round if they go up against each other? Like, would LA because they were in a divisional spot, or does Nashville because Nashville had more points?
I think LA would because they were higher in the seeding based on.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. I think that's how it works, but I'm like, I don't like that.
Yeah,
like if you had more points, you should be getting home ice advantage.
Yeah.
Honestly, I also don't like the idea of once the playoff starts, it's like you've basically got 4 different playoff brackets.
Yeah.
And then eventually, the top 4 teams out of each one come to a head. It's like I don't like sitting there being like, oh, you're watching the Vancouver Nashville and you're watching Edmonton LA. You're like, these 2 winners are for sure playing each other. I like the,
when they
Once the four
reseed.
teams that have won, you just take the most points versus the bottom, and you do that, and then because then you just get more different matchups.
Yeah,
Right? You're
I
not
really
locked
like
into
that.
a certain setting for it.
Yeah, I
Um,
like the reseeding where at the end of each round they redo the format for the next round and then place you based on that.
yeah,
I do like that. And you know what? Even if it's not perfect, if they did it for 10 years and then changed it back, like it would just keep things from getting stale. Like honestly, I don't know
yeah.
if there's a perfect playoff format. I think the perfect format is finding 3 or 4 ways that work well and just rotating through to keep the league feeling fresh. Like
I don't like that. I'd want them to find one that, because again, you're never going to find a format that everybody's going to be happy with. Like people are going to
yeah,
find ways to nitpick at whatever one you go with. But even just finding that like majority of people can be happy with, and even again, even if it's something like every 5 years or something, you change it, or like because the NHL is doing a lot of things right, and the game is constantly evolving, and a lot of changes are happening. Why is this like the one shittiest thing about the league is the playoff format, and that's the one thing they're not changing.
yeah.
Like that's the
I
thing that bugs me is everything is changing in the NHL except the one thing that is by far the worst thing about it.
it's pretty bad. I would say that maybe the I would like to see the point system changed as well. Um moving to a
Yeah,
3-2-1 system, but both of them
that
are
is one
pretty
thing
lame.
too. Yeah,
One makes for boring overtime, one makes for boring matchups in the playoffs if they tend to repeat themselves a lot. Um,
yeah,
Obviously, you know, if it's more boring if teams play each other where it's a landslide one way all the time, or if they just don't have fun matchups. You know,
yeah.
like even some of the more entertaining matchups. After a few years, you just want to see something different. And also, even if they're good matchups, a lot of the times you want to see those matchups later. Like like
Yeah.
you know, Toronto Tampa's fun and all, but like it would be more fun if it was a second round matchup, a third round matchup. You know, maybe that's a tall order for Toronto, but you know, seeing some of these matchups would be fun if they had a little more stakes to them as well. So
Mhm.
meeting
Yeah.
those teams meeting in the first round can suck a lot of the times, but yeah,
Yeah, like there's so many
hopefully they'll change it.
options, and yeah, I would love to just see, if they could do the 3-2-1 system, or even you just do, I guess with 3-2-1, but like you get rid of the shootout. I get they don't like the idea of just continuous overtime because of traveling and whatnot. Like I do get that, but at the end of the day, if you just do 3-on-3 overtime until there's a winner, it's not going to go that long. Like you're not going to be sitting there going through multiple 20-minute overtimes of 3-on-3.
And
Like even if you bumped it up to 10 minutes, most games like you're rarely going to see shootouts even at that
yeah,
point. Like if you go
yeah,
10 minutes,
dude, if they just made it one more period, 20 more minutes, 3-on-3, and then they go to overtime, or then they go to shootout, you're going to see very few shootouts.
I don't
And
think you'd even ever see a shootout.
probably not. I and the only way they would is if they don't introduce something else to change over time, in particular some sort of shot clock. Make it so teams can't just be like, this doesn't feel right, and then they leave the zone with the puck and they skate all the way to their end and they regroup and they slowly skate it. That 3-on-3 is sometimes really entertaining. It is not entertaining when teams are doing that. And I get it.
Well,
It's a
they've
slow-paced way
talked
to win.
about
You make
bringing.
yourself space, it's defensive, fine, but it's not fun to watch, and it's not a fun way to watch the game end either.
Well, they've talked about bringing in the rule of like in overtime, like in 3-on-3, it's if you have possession of the puck, once you cross center ice, you can't bring it back into your own end past center ice, and if you do, then the play's blown dead and then a face off. It's
Yeah.
right, like it's once you get across center ice, it's like you're on offense. There's no delaying and making the other team tired and then trying to get that long stretch pass or something. It's once you go, you go. So
Yeah. I really think something like that, make it so they can't leave the zone or Yeah, even if they added a shot clock of 45 seconds a minute, give them a decent bit of time. And
Hmm.
if they've just been skating in circles, making 1 or 2 drop passes and that's it, and they're still just skating around in the neutral or offensive zone doing nothing, you blow the play dead and you go do a face off in that team zone. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it just, at worst, you're going and you're doing a face off. Like, it would make it more entertaining. If a team does that 3 times in a single overtime, then you hit them with a delay of game penalty or something. Like,
Yeah.
if teams really start to abuse that, in the
Well, and then
past,
even if it's like you bring it across center ice and then you bring it back, plays blown dead, you can't make a change. Like your guys that are out there have to stay out there, and it's a face off in your own end,
yeah,
right? Like then at that point, I don't think like any team would be doing that, especially if you got like some tired guys. Like if you bring it across center ice and you've got a couple tired guys that want to go change, sure, but like once you bring it in past the red line, if you bring it back across, plays blown dead, all of you are staying out here, face off in your own end. The other team can make a change. Like they could send out all of their big dogs,
yeah.
but like and then yeah, I don't think you'd really see any team. Uh,
And that's an important part of it too, because
mhm,
then the other team can get a new face-off guy out there for the draw. Because
yeah,
otherwise, I feel like you would see teams going, "Oh, they've got a defenseman and 2 wingers out there," or "This guy sucks at face-offs, and we got, you know, freaking Philip Deneau out there. Like, we're golden," and they'll just
yeah,
do it and take the face-off and go win the draw. So if you can swap and get your best face-off guy out there, I think that helps.
yeah.
Like, I yeah,
There's lots of
I would
different
love to
things
see
they
some
can do.
changes.
Yeah, and I think over time we're slowly gonna, no pun intended there with overtime, but like as time goes on, we are gonna slowly see more and more changes happen. The one thing
Yeah,
I'm worried about is it's gonna be a while before we see the playoff format change above all else. Like that's one thing I'm really hoping to see a change with, but like we're gonna keep seeing changes happen more and more over time. We're getting a lot of, newer GMs in the league, a lot of former players, and they have a big say in a lot of these things. And I think as former players and whatnot, like they know the game best, right? Like they're not just
yeah,
the business guys that we're used to seeing, the guys out there to just make money and they think they're a mastermind. Like we're seeing a lot of former players, and they're going to be such a breath. Like they're going to bring such a new, fresh perspective um, to the game, and I have high hopes for what they're going to be able to bring to this league.
yeah, yeah, and hopefully they do. I think that will probably change once Gary Bettman's out.
Yeah,
Once I think Gary Bettman's going to stick around for, I believe it's 2 more years. Negotiate the new collective bargaining agreement, and I think that's going to be his big stamp, his big legacy. He's going to negotiate that, and then I think he is going to retire as the commissioner. I'm hoping. We'll see. Uh, but you know, hopefully that happens. Who knows? It's impossible to guess until it happens. Um,
yeah.
but that was a long-winded way of saying we both think the LA Kings are going to make the playoffs next year.
Yeah, whatever way the playoffs are, the LA Kings will be in. Um, we didn't even do individual player awards yet.
No,
Bach. All right,
no,
let's get this going. Let's get this going. We've been going long here.
we've been going
Um,
long. Go Yard.
one player, individual award. Who you got?
There's a couple fun ones you could pick, but I think it's just the smart option. I'm going Anze Kopitar for the Selkie.
Okay, I think that's the only option, right? Like if Brant Clark was available for the Calder, um, that's an option. Like no one's winning the Norris, no one's winning Art Ross, no one's winning
Yeah.
the Hart, the Rocket. Like
I could see a
Is
world where
Kemper's gonna have a good year,
Drew
but he's
Doughty
not
gets
winning
one more.
Vezina.
Drew Doughty could maybe get a
No, I
Norris,
don't see him putting up the
but
point totals with
no,
other guys in the league.
yeah, I don't see it as more likely than Kopitar.
Yeah, Kopitar is really the only solid option. So it's a bit boring, but that's one I got to go with
Yeah,
too.
for a major award, because honestly, I think
Yeah,
Kopitar does have a very good shot at winning the Lady Bing award. I believe he won it not this most recent season, but the season prior. So, and I believe he's won it before that as well in his career. I think he's won it a couple times. So that's very likely. But if you don't count that as a major award, Kopitar for Selkie is not a bad shout.
yeah. Kopitar, he's got 2 Lady Bings and 2 Selkies, and he's got a Marc Messier Leadership Award.
I
Doesn't mean
almost said that,
he's got
but
one.
it's just that like even if you think the Lady Bing isn't a major award, you gotta at least put it above the award that Mark just decides.
Yeah, especially after giving it to Trouba.
Yeah.
But that does wrap up everything for this episode, covering the Carolina Hurricanes and the LA Kings. Got a little extra bonus coverage there, talking about kind of some ideas for playoffs and whatnot, for what we would like to see get changed. The only thing that's left before we get out of here is picking who will be the teams featured in the next episode. Do we want to go with what we discussed, or do we want to keep it on just picking random teams, or do we want to go with what we discussed?
I think we go with it. I think we came in with a plan.
We came with a plan.
We did our homework.
Spoiler alert, we did discuss before this episode on how we wanted to do the next one. We kind of cheated. We're not doing surprise this ones. We are going with each other's least favorite teams. So with that being said, next episode, I will be covering the defending Stanley Cup champion, the Florida Panthers.
And I will be covering the 1 year removed Stanley Cup champions, the Vegas Golden Knights.
Couple shitty years for us, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be the haters edition of off-season review for the next one. So we'll try and at least say some positive things for each other's nemesis. I'll say some things about Vegas. You could say some things about Florida, and we'll hopefully not be too bad about it, because they are, like we just said, they both just won cups, so they are both very good teams. So there's a lot to talk about there.
We'll be in the darkest timeline ever for this podcast if it goes Vegas Stanley Cup champion, Florida Panthers Stanley Cup champion, and then Edmonton Oilers Stanley Cup champion. That'll be a dark time for this.
Yeah.
For this podcast. I just want a Stanley Cup champion where we can sit here and just, both celebrate. Like, obviously you kind of celebrated Vegas's a little bit. I obviously couldn't. I kind of celebrated Florida's a little bit. You really couldn't. Like, it's a team that we can just...
I guess I did celebrate. I celebrated for Vegas because they were against Florida. I really am not a fan of Vegas.
But yeah.
They had
that's kind of the same with
Phil
me.
Was there. That was fun.
Yeah, no.
That's neat, I guess.
Yeah, that does wrap up everything for this episode. Next one, we'll be covering the Florida Panthers and Vegas Golden Knights. If you want to join in on any hockey talk with us or any of the teams that we have yet to cover, if we haven't covered your team and you want to hear it sooner, feel free to let us know. The links to all of our socials are now in the descriptions for each episodes. So you can go there, click the link, go straight to our profiles. Come talk hockey with us. There's always lots to discuss and talk about. We are always willing to engage in any hockey talk. So if you guys want that, feel free to come by, say hello, throw us any questions, and we'll either reach out just back to you and talk about them, or if it's a big enough topic or something, we can always discuss it live in an episode. Braden, you got anything you want to lastly throw up before we bounce, get out of here? We scram forever. By forever, I mean maybe a couple of days.
No, you summed it up pretty good there. Yeah, we got a little sidetracked in the middle in a couple different spots. Sorry about the long episode, but hey, that's just more hockey talk for you in the off season. So if you're a fan of Vegas or Florida, get excited for the next one, and hopefully we've done your team justice with these reviews. Let us know as well, not just for the upcoming teams, but for the teams you already covered. Let us know if there's something we didn't talk about enough that maybe we should mention in another episode, or you know, was there something we were completely off base with? A guy we were saying is good defensively that sucks defensively, but he's really good in the offensive zone. Like if we're, there's 32 teams. It's hard to keep for us to keep up on all of them, like in depth. So if we're off base with one of these teams, feel free to let us know. We are not immune to eating shit every once in a while. So
Yeah.
if we did, let us know.
Yeah, we're always open to criticism. So yeah, feel free to talk shit about us, rip us apart. Once again, we do really hope all of you enjoyed this episode. Give us a good rating on any podcast platform, whatever you are listening on.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, do that.
That wraps everything up. We will see you guys next week.